Hello and welcome to Informally Formal. We have a very important topic today and an equally important person that we are going to be talking to. Anis Khan is a career banker that started his career with Grinleys on to Standard Chartered and many other fine institutions, including at the helm of IDLC and 11 years at the helm of Mutual Trust Bank Limited. After his retirement there, he continues to be very busy serving on the boards of many fine organizations like ACI, Berger Paints, Summit, and others. He also serves as the adjunct faculty of banking and finance at IUB. He's a past chairman of the Bankers Association here in Bangladesh. So I guess we should get started. First of all, a very warm welcome to you, Anis. Very warm welcome.
Thank you, and my greetings to all the viewers. Thank you for watching.
All right, wonderful. So let's dive right in. What I want to talk about, Anis, is, in our last segment, we talked about the need for the financial sector, especially in the banking and insurance sector, to consolidate. Let's just stick to banking for right now. If we consolidate, we achieve economies of scale. We achieve many efficiencies, good for the customer, good for the owners, good for the international relationship that these banks have. Now, what I'm going to do is ask you, you must have heard from the 2008 financial crisis, too large to fail. So we want to make sure that we merge, but we do not get to that threshold of where it becomes so large that it's too large to fail. Over to you, Anis.
Now, that's a very good thing to say, that we must take lessons from what the West and other countries have already experimented with. And we should learn from their failures and we should learn from their successes. So definitely, we should go, as I said earlier in the earlier segment, for a merger and acquisition process. But then that should be something which should be tailored to Bangladesh's needs. So it should be our own hybrid model. And because also for employment considerations, we have a huge population and so many thousands of graduates are coming out from our 100+ universities that we now have, both in the public sector and in the private sector, and people coming back from abroad. We need to have them employed. So I'm not advocating merger and acquisition that 61 or 62 banks should become 5 or 7. I'm advocating that these should become like 25 to 30. This is what is my prescription. And also, because there are so many, first of all, for 61 banks, do you really have 61 chief risk officers, for example? Risk management needs special qualities, special experience, special training. How many individuals in Bangladesh have that? Very few. In any case, management in banks as a department is fairly new. Then risk management means it deals separately with overall risk of the bank, capital, operations, everything, not only credit risk. So there is a separate chief credit risk officer. That's a separate area. Then you have a technology officer, chief technology officer. Then you have a chief heading the wholesale or the corporate bank. Then you have a chief heading the retail bank. Then you have a chief, these days now you have a digital area. Then you have a cards area. These were not there before. So having said that, as the life goes on and technology takes more hold, it is also opening up new horizons for employment. We may be wanting to merge, but at the same time, this digital area is emerging. But on the IT side, the IT security side department is important. I put in place an IT security department in Mutual Trust Bank. And now all banks, in my opinion, need it. A number of banks have also followed suit and other banks should follow. So in that sense, the employment will continue because senior people will continue to man these positions. Then alternate products like cards and ATMs, etc. So they need an alternate delivery channel. So that comes into the digital channel together. So the employment will continue to be there. So if you then merge this into 25, 30 banks, then a certain bank has got only 100,000 cards. This is nothing for operating a card business, for the amount of investment that is required and the amount of products that you are giving back. There are buy one, give one free. There's a cost for the bank. So in that sense, then you will have more efficiencies of scale in the ATMs, in the POS machines out there, in the shops and establishments, in the cars business. So I am strongly advocating that we have our own hybrid model. We collapse into 25 to 30 banks. There are these 4 big government banks. There should become 2, in my opinion, but then there is a lot of social problem with that, because they say that these banks serve a purpose out there in the villages where the private banks do not go. But that argument should not hold true anymore, because many private banks are now opening agent banking sectors across the country. Bikash has done wonders for the country. Now Nogod is there. So through that, you're able to access every nook and cranny of the country in transferring funds to the people of Bangladesh. And the agent banking centers then provide the upscaled services. So in every village, in a cluster of villages, you will have an agent banking center, and there are so many. MTB has 150 agent banking centers. Bank Asia has a lot. Dutch Bangla has a lot, and so on. So as the banks go forward, you will have all those there. So if you are having those, then it makes sense for merging those rural branches, because rural branches serve a limited purpose. All people in the rural areas, they want is the remittance come in, put their money in. They do not really have much need for LC business. They don't have that. They don't have much need for foreign currency business. They don't have need of that. So you should be able to do with, also now Bangladesh Bank is allowing sub branches. So through the sub branches, through the agent banking centers, through the mobile financial services, you can reach the
Right.
So in that sense, to merge the government banks into 2. And in one bazaar, you have Shonali and Rupali and Ogroni and Janata. You have 2 of those banks, not 4 of those banks. Similarly, the private banks, everybody, they're like 20. You look here, you look there, and there are 5 ATMs together. You don't need 5 ATMs together. It's not efficient. So the collapse for those 5 banks into 2 banks, and then you can take larger premises, more people to service people who walk in, and then to look after the technology.
Right. If I take from our first talk that we had, Anis, you had mentioned that it all ought to start with the right political will. I go back to saying that because without that, nothing would get started, obviously. And your point you make amply clear. Obviously, the economies of scale that can be achieved. We have so many ATMs clustered together. We don't really need that. It's inefficient. So that is a point very well understood. Let me ask you another question here that came to mind as you were explaining the different banks that we have in the same, the landscape has changed quite a bit with Bikash, with Nogod, with this agent banking scheme that we have, and the sub-branch that now Bangladesh Bank allows. So is there any need for the government's directive that if you open one branch in an urban area, then you ought to have something in a ratio or whatever in a rural area? Would you reflect on that?
There is a law which obliges banks to open a rural branch if they open a city branch. And when I left MTB with 118 branches, there were 15 branches which were unprofitable. And of the 15 branches unprofitable, 12 were rural branches. Normally, urban branches become profitable in a year to 2 years' time. Normally. After that, if it's not becoming profitable, there's some problem with that, with that location. Then you should relocate to another area. You may have an expense, but it's better to relocate. But with the urban branches, some will never ever become profitable, and that is a service that you do. So my suggestion to the central bank would be that what you should do is, yes, you may not want to change the law regulation. Okay, 1 city branch, 1 rural, or you can say 1 rural or 2 sub-branch. You can give an option, 2 sub-branch, or you can say 4 agent banking centers. They can give an option to the bank. With the financial inclusion keenness of the central bank and what their central bank is doing, and it started during Dr. Atiyur Rahman's time. Actually interviewed Dr. Atiyur just before yesterday on my.
What's that? Brilliant, brilliant, yeah.
And I had a ringside seat with the financial inclusion activities. I went to so many villages along with him, and then continued by his illustrious predecessor and my very dear class friend, Mr. Fazli Kabir, who is currently the governor. So he's continuing with those policies and expanding further. He's the one who's allowed these sub-branches after I appealed to him in a bankers meeting.
So let me now switch gears real quickly, Anis. Let me ask you, what is the percentage of non-banked or underbanked in Bangladesh, in the rural areas?
There is no non-banking financial institution in rural areas because they can't afford to be there. And to set up a branch requires at least 4 people. 2 people is not good enough because you have to think of frauds and forgeries. So 4 people. There are some SME branches of larger non-banks like IDLC. They do have some branches out there, but then they don't have much of a prospect. First of all, they do have an image problem. People in villages don't know what is IDLC or IPDC or Lanka. They don't have any idea. And people in villages also want to know if it's a bank or not. I don't think non-banking financial institution, except for SME related financing, they have much prospects in
the population out there, what percentage in the rural area are still what they call underbanked or that do not have any banking relationship in the population is what I meant to ask.
According to a study made by the Bangladesh Institute of Banking Management, in which I also asked them 2 days ago, it's about 50% of the country's people who are unbanked. They don't have any bank accounts. There are something like 50 million bank accounts plus already, but that means that some people have multiple accounts. People like you and me, we do have multiple accounts for various reasons. Similarly, like there are like 160 million SIMs in Bangladesh, but it doesn't mean 160 million people have it. People again like me and you have multiple SIMs for our iPad and for the phone, etc., etc. So we said that about only 90 million people have phone connections along with the multiple SIMs. So similar is the case with the bank account. So 50% remains unbanked. But if somebody was to do a survey of that 50%, how many has a bKash account? How many has a Nogod account? How many has a Rocket account? And how they are making do with that. So that's a good question to ask and a good research to do, I think, for the researchers.
And that goes back to what you had suggested, as you had mentioned just a while ago, that banking, as you go into the rural areas, it could be in lieu of having a branch, it could be a sub-branch, or it could be one of these, institutions such as bKash or, agent. Right. I'm going to switch gears once again, Anis, and I'm going to ask you is just alongside when we say too large to fail for an institution, similarly, we could apply that same concept to from a customer's side. If a customer has loans that are way too big for any given financial institution, then that customer again becomes too large to fail. So the banks cannot afford now for that customer to default. And as you very well know, that we have some of those problems in Bangladesh. And in the Bangladesh banking, with some customers are so large in terms of the loan volume that they have, that we simply cannot afford for them to fail. Your reflections on that?
Well, you're quite right that a very large customer would actually jeopardize the whole balance sheet and existence of a bank. So that is where the risk management comes in. That's why the Bangladesh bank regulation, which came in about, let's say, 5 to 6 years ago, it's not before that, when they set up this risk management department and said that the chief risk officer should be somebody who should be definitely be of the rank of deputy managing director to give importance to the position and that people listen to him in the bank. And also there should be a risk management committee of the board. So now, and they should have quarterly meetings looking at the concentration of risk, looking at the technology risk, credit risks, operational risk, human resource risk. There's not only one risk. So all the multiple risks are now looked at with a magnifying glass by the risk management committee. And I remember in Mutual Trust Bank, we had the brilliant Dr. Adit Dola as the chairman of the risk management committee. And he would really give us a very hard time, and it's the right thing that he did, that he gave us a hard time and we learned along the way how to analyze further, and also not to allow concentration of risk in one customer. Not only that, also concentration of risk in one area of business, because if that area of business collapses, it pulls down in multiple customers. So a bank has to be able to spread its money across a broad spectrum of businesses and industries. But again, having said that, it makes a bit of a problem for Bangladesh because the bulk of our export and this comes from the textile industry, from the garment industry.
Right.
That is what 80% plus of the exports of Bangladesh is from the garments industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's where again you are stuck. There's not much of diversification you can do. What you can do is really look at the creditworthiness and standing of the customers. And if the principal actor, something goes wrong, what is the succession in that company? And also look at the corporate governance before you lend money to us.
Right, right. In our closing minutes, very quickly, what comes to mind? A couple of other policy reform things that you could come up with, go ahead, please.
And what I think is something which banks in Bangladesh do not do, that is research. They should have a research department, research and development wing. I had put in a research and development wing in MTB, and it was their job to go out to villages and towns and areas and find out where there is a gap for banking needs, and accordingly they would recommend to us, and then that we would submit to the board along with the feasibility report, the number, and only then the board would approve it, setting up a branch, not before that. So R&D is something which needs to be there in every bank, and it's a small investment. You don't need very chief R&D and DMD, you don't need somebody like that. You can have somebody who's an assistant vice president or something, along with some officers, 2 or 3 officers doing that job, who have an analytical mind. And it's a job they do for a few years, and then they move on to other areas of banking, having done that. So I think it's extremely important that a bank does constant analysis of competitor activity, of the viability of a product, of the shelf life of a product, when it is time to, put it in the bin and bring out a new one, and study the regional countries, what they do, because normal bankers, normal marketing people don't have time. They're so busy looking after operations and campaign rollouts and service issues. So you need a standalone in a quiet corner in R&D department, of course, set with tasks and responsibilities and deliverables, like every month, and presentations made to the Mancom. What have you come up with? Keep telling us, keep telling us. I would really advocate this very much. In addition, we need to upscale the quality of our professionals. They're very good professionals, but they do not again get the training opportunities. They're always being made to work and work and work and work. They should be taken off work. Nobody's indispensable. People die, people retire. I have retired, so the world is going on. The world has never come to an end. Nobody can think that the graves are full of Alexanders and Napoleons and Nehrus and so on. So the life goes on, the world goes on. So train the younger people. What I have learned, I must dish it out today to the younger, so that they are brighter than me, they're intelligent than me, they're more experienced than me at a younger age and do more. The next generation should always do more than me for the country to go forward and excel. That is always my dream and aspiration.
I guess with those words, we close out this session. What a pleasure it was. Anisa Khan, thank you so much for taking this time out for our audience from your busy schedule. We look forward to our next session. And in the meanwhile, please stay safe, stay well. I'll catch you in the next session. Bye-bye.